Good morning, rise and shine. I guess I should show you the sunrise. It's a good one. It's really cool today because believe it or not, it's actually cool. I had to grab a jacket and there is a lot of mist. I don't know if you can see it coming off of the water. Very cool. Very cool because of the coolness. All right, this morning I read Hosea. So we're going to do one book at a time now, or a day. And then before 2 weeks is over, about another week and a half, we'll be into the New Testament. I'm excited. And Hosea, I have to admit, I was reading Hosea and my mind said, boy, I feel like I keep reading the same thing over and over again, repetition. So the concept of repetition came to my mind. And I know as a new, excuse me, as a new kind of writer and business owner and new to sort of the content and teaching coaching arena, I was like, oh, wait a minute. I can't say that. Somebody's already said it before. You know, this is the imposter syndrome, or the thing that happens to a lot of people that are new to the world of learning and psychology. And, well, not even this world, but even in my real estate career, it's like, oh, I can't say that. Somebody else has already said that. We humans can literally hear the same thing over and over again before, like we need to. Repetition, it takes us, we're hard-headed. It takes us a long time to learn. Every once in a while, there's sort of that lightning bolt moment when you hear something and it's like, ah, but even then you think it might be a lightning bolt moment and it's the first time you've heard it, but you've really heard it umpteen times before. We learn by repetition. Teachers know this. Scientists know this, that study the brain. It takes a long time. And that's not a bad thing. And every time we stumble or fall, we can learn from it. Now, that part is a choice. People have to be kind of awake and conscious enough to, and have the right perspective to do that. But even stumbling and falling repeatedly can be a good learning experience. Look at kids. Like, what if they took their first step, stumbled, and said, well, that's it. I can't get it. Like, if they mistakenly watched another toddler just toddling around and thought that was their first time and that was the way it was supposed to go. But we humans, especially adults, and even young adults, I watch my kids struggle with this. Like, there's an expectation that we should just read it, see somebody else do it, and just have it figured out. And we can just skip the learning process, the repetition process. And even habits. How do habits get formed? And we know the importance of habit, especially the good ones that bring us the good results. It takes repeat. And even then, and so let's say you were over here, you know, in a different habit that got you results, that you eventually woke up and said, wait a minute, I don't like this outcome. And then to like change from that over here, that's hard work. And that takes even more repetition. So even though I was kind of reading the same, like, part of what made me do this, if you read Hosea, you'll see there's multiple references to lions tearing people up. Like, it was like, well, you just said that. Why are you saying it again? And even using the same analogies. And so that's where my mind, and then at the very last verse, the last sentence or two of chapter 14, it says, the righteous will walk along the path, you know, kind of easily. That word's not in there, but then you can kind of infer it, because then it says, and the sinners who walk in the same path or try to walk in the same path will stumble. And I was like, ding, 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 ding. Yes. So that is like when you are in one place over here doing things that are getting you an outcome that is not beneficial, and you wake up to that, and then you try to change your ways and go over. I'm like on a path, so I'm pretending I'm dividing it into like 2 paths here. And then you go over here and you're like, okay, this path is going to get me where I want to go, but it's not familiar. You haven't walked it before. You're still over here walking this way that requires a different style of walking, or a different, something about it over here. You know how to do that path. But then you go over here and it's like, wait a minute, this is unfamiliar. I'm wobbly. I can't do this. And then the temptation is to just go over here where it's smooth and you know the way, even though you want to be over here doing this thing. But it feels weird. It feels you're falling, like it's not comfortable, like all the things. But if you stick with it, you will get familiar with that path, and that path will get familiar with you. It's like a 2-way street, and the information has to transfer through experience. And the more you practice walking in this path, the more it's like, oh. And then the results or the outcomes will come, but you've got to stick with it. You've got to get up and stay in that path, even when you stumble. Don't go back to your old ways, or if you do, and you notice it, just get right back over. I have a 16-year-old who's going to take her road test this morning. As soon as I get back, my writing's going to have to happen later today because we've got to get in the car and go. And, the driving is a perfect example of this repetition and autopilot. Have you ever driven somewhere and maybe you've been on the phone, you've been so into your music, like whatever it is, and you're like, how? And you pull in your driveway or pull in where you're going, you're like, I think I just drove like 20 miles and I don't remember it. You were so focused on maybe the other thing, but your brain was so literally on autopilot. That can be a little scary if you've done it before, but if you think about it, that is a skill. And that's what we need to do in our life with the things that we need to do on a regular basis that get us where we want to go. We want to put that, I almost said shiitake, on autopilot. And we want to do that, but it takes time. And if you've been over in one way, and of course the Bible refers to this as righteousness versus sin, foolishness versus wisdom, all of that. And it is, good morning, my friend. But basically, if we take it back to the road analogy, like you gotta put things in autopilot that intentionally you're at this starting point and you want to get there. That's where you want to go. You've got to put those things on autopilot. And what a lot of us have done, because we don't realize how important repetition is, and we don't respect it in our brains, we think we can just think something, want something, and then it will happen. No, that's not the way it happens. There's a lot of chemistry happening in this body and biology and science that we've got to work with. We've got to learn to work with. And let me pause for a minute and show you. It's just so cool when you see the nature. And here's some chemistry happening right there. In physics, we've got the cold air on a warm surface doing its thing, creating steam. Like, we've got to know how we interact with our world and how our brain works and learn from it, instead of like going, oh, I did it again, I can't believe it. And then thinking and shaming ourselves, willing ourselves, like all of these things that are hard, and they don't work, by the way. we've got to get back to the basics and have respect. When you're trying to do something that you've been on autopilot with for, like me, like 30 years, it's going to take just a minute to get over here and put a new autopilot system in place. Good morning. Hey, I missed you too. It's going to take just a minute, and we've got to respect that process and be willing to go through the rote repetition, even though it's like, ugh, here we go again. Yep, here we go again. Can you imagine if you had that attitude when you were a toddler? You'd still be sitting in your diapers. But of course, we don't do that. We've got to even bring that enthusiasm of our toddler selves to this going, wow, I'm learning to do something new. Oh my goodness, I fell. Let me pull myself back up and start going again. That attitude helps. The attitude that adults, unfortunately, typically bring to the table of unrealistic expectations, thinking that willpower or thinking is enough to just, we can skip all the letters of the alphabet and just go from A to Z. And then we tell ourselves how stupid, what losers we are, whatever, why can't I get this? Like, I see over there, and even mistakenly looking at other people going, well, it's so easy for them. Well, they've already been through their practice period of repetition and putting that stuff on autopilot. When you're new to the game, you got to let yourself be new. And newness to mastery to autopilot, you got to put your hours in. If you've ever read Malcolm Gladwell's book, Outliers, it's a good one, by the way. You got to put your 10,000 hours in of repetition. It's kind of like what the Old Testament is with all these folks. And for our learning, we got to hear it over and over and over again from 20 different prophets. I don't know if that's how many there are, by the way. I'm allowing myself to be a newbie, reading the Bible through for the first time and really taking my time with it. The next time I read it, I may have a new level of understanding. Of course I will. And so on and so forth. And as I learn to walk in new ways, you got to be willing to stumble and fall when you're moving from sin to righteousness, foolishness to wisdom, whatever labels you want to put on it. Whatever you want is over there. And in order to go there, you've got to do things differently. The same thing. What is the definition of insanity? I think according to AA, doing the same thing over and over again, but expecting different results. Yes, a lot of us are insane. But our desires are not going to go away. When we want that thing and we know it's possible, it is never going to leave you alone, because that desire is going to be like, hello, you need to get over there. Unless you just literally chemically put it to sleep, and take on some different strategies that keep you on the stumbling path. All right, I probably chit-chatted enough. I need to make sure my almost independent driver, I think it's so appropriate that she's going to be getting her freedom here. It's July 4th this weekend, and be able to drive on her own. New territory. This is going to talk about something that's going to take repetition as a mama before my nerves settle down. It's going to take repeated times of me watching her go out the door and get in that car by herself, and her coming back home safely before my brain will be able to go, okay, I think we're okay here. She can do this, and I can do this. I can let her go and trust that she will come back. All right, my friends. That is the book of Hosea, is what I got from it, at least this time. Repetition and habit science. And you can't skip the repetition part. You just can't. This is how humans learn. You've got to accept it, allow it, do it, stick with it, stay on the path, and eventually you will not stumble anymore. But if you try to go back and forth and trying to walk in two different paths, you'll stumble in both. So pick one. You should pick the one that's going to bring good fruit into your life. That's the better choice. Maybe we should say better. I don't like such judgy words, but it is what it is. All right, my friends, go have a great Wednesday or whatever day of the week it is for you. Whatever season, go make it a good one. Rise and shine.